Cells need things such as oxygen and water to survive. To get these materials, they have to allow them into the cell from the outside world. The cells allow things to enter and exit through a process known as transportation. Oxygen and food are allowed into the cell, and waste material is allowed out of the cell. To do this, these materials must pass through a selectively permeable or semi-permeable membrane. This means that it allows certain materials in and out while keeping harmful materials out of the cell. There are three different methods that allow substances to move in and out of the cell. The first one is diffusion. Diffusion is the main method by which small molecules move across the cell membrane. Diffusion is the process by which molecules move from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. The concentration of a substance is the amount of the substance in a given volume. For example, suppose you dissolve 1 gram of sugar in 1 liter of water. The concentration of the sugar solution is 1 gram per liter. In the activity that we did in class, we observed diffusion in action. The area where the air freshener was sprayed had many molecules of freshener. The molecules gradually moved from this area of higher concentration to the other parts of the classroom, where there were fewer molecules of the air freshener, and thus a lower concentration. So how do these molecules actually move? Molecules are always moving. As they move, the molecules bump into one another. The more molecules there are in an area, the more collisions there will be. Collisions cause molecules to push away from one another. Over time, the molecules of a substance will continue to spread out. Eventually, they will spread out evenly through an area. The second method of cell transportation is known as osmosis. Like oxygen, water passes easily into and out of cells through the cell membrane. Osmosis is the diffusion of water molecules through a selectively permeable membrane. Because cells cannot function properly without adequate water, many cell processes depend on osmosis. Water molecules are going to also move from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. There are a few different scenarios that can occur when water is moving into and out of a cell. In the first scenario, you have an equal concentration of water inside the cell and outside the cell. When this happens, we say that the cell is in equilibrium, and the cell maintains its normal shape. The same amount of water is going into and out of the cell the entire time. The next scenario happens when there's a higher content of water inside the cell than outside of the cell. Now when this happens, usually there is another substance such as salt or sugar that's in a higher concentration outside of the cell. What happens is the water inside the cell is going to move out to try to create an equilibrium of water inside and outside the cell. This means there will be the same amount whether you're in or out. When this happens, water flows out of the cell into the surrounding area, and this causes the cell to shrivel up because it's losing water. The last scenario in osmosis occurs when there is more water outside of the cell than inside of the cell. When this occurs, the water is going to move into the cell, causing the cells to get bigger and bigger and eventually swell up. This is dangerous because cells can burst if they reach a certain size. When we talk about types of cell transport, we'll often use terms such as active transport or passive transport. Passive transport means that no energy is required by the cell to do that action. Osmosis and diffusion are both passive transports because the cell is not using its own energy for this to occur. Active transport, however, does need energy for it to occur. This is usually because it's going in the opposite direction from a low concentration to a high concentration, so it takes more energy for this to happen. You'll learn more about this in high school. Right now we're going to focus primarily on passive transport.